Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are your hosts. Movie Club is the show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it like a book club. On today's show, we are covering the adventure sci-fi classic Back to the Future. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1985, Back to the Future was directed by Robert Zemeckis and stars Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, and Lea Thompson. Marty McFly, a 17-year-old high school student, is accidentally sent 30 years into the past in a time-traveling DeLorean invented by his close friend, the maverick scientist Doc Brown. Back to the Future won one Oscar for Best Sound Effects Editing and was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, Best Sound, and Best Original Song for Power of Love. It is currently number 32 on IMDb's Top 250 and has a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd and is currently ranked number 229 on its Top 250. Before we dive into our thoughts, though, we do want to issue a spoiler warning. We will be discussing plot points, twists, revelations, and more on the show. If you haven't seen the film yet, we'd recommend watching it, then coming back here. Stay tuned to the end of the show for next week's film so you can watch it before the show comes out. Alrighty, Kevin. So yeah, we got a big movie this week. We got Back to the Future. So what is your story with Back to the Future? Because I mean, this is one that you brought forward to the table. You wanted to watch this one. Do you have a history with it? Have you seen it before? What do you got going on with Back to the Future?
So I have seen this before, but I feel like I should regularly watch this because of how good of a movie this is and how rewatchable it is as well. It's kind of a tricky title too. It's Back to the Future, but they go back to the past. So it kind of is like, okay, it's not really going back to the future, but he also made a time machine so he can go to the future. So, but I still love the Back to the Future title of it too, which is really nice.
Yeah, and it's summing up the plot of the movie, right? Yeah, you're going back to the past, but when you get back to the past, you got to get back to the future. In which it's, again, brilliant title for this movie and really sums up its story really well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everybody has a good part in this movie and they execute it pretty well. Like, I don't think there's one actor or actress that I was like, they could have done a little bit better. They're all pretty spot on with their characters, I feel like.
Yeah, everyone fits the character they're playing very well. You know, Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, perfect casting. I know he wasn't the actual original choice for the character, but he stepped into the shoes and did it quite well. I mean, Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd, legendary. One of the best side characters probably in any 80s film, for sure. Just an iconic character all the way around. And, I mean, obviously you've got Crispin Glover and Lea Thompson as Marty's parents. Great as well. Crispin Glover really plays up that nerd angle so well, almost so well that it hurts being a fellow geek / nerd. And then Lea Thompson just plays that warm kind of motherly portrayal, both in the past and in the present, I guess you could say, or the future for 1955. That's going to get really confusing if we don't talk about that correctly. And another standout that doesn't get enough attention, in my opinion, is Tom Wilson, who plays Biff Tannen in these films. So much fun. He's just a great bully villain to have around.
Yeah, he is. He looks like a bully too. It's not like the skinny bullies or anything like that. He looks like back in the day he could beat me up right now. So
yeah, probably even in the 80s, you could probably beat the crap out of at least me. I don't know. I'm not a fighter, so I mean, I'll probably get beaten up any single day of the week by probably anyone on the cast. But also, like, we gotta talk. I mean, some of the highlights of this film. Obviously, we both have a very positive outlook on this film. It's very clear to see. I do want to talk about the intro for this movie and how, without music, it's just silently and in one take, really establishes everything we need to know about both Doc and Marty.
Yeah, I mean, the music is spot on. Like I know one of your pet peeves is putting in pop music in modern day movies and stuff like that. This one, it feels like it's a part of the movie. If you don't have this, I don't think if they don't have the music in like the first part of this, I don't think it would be as rememberable as it is now.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think, my pet peeve with pop music really comes in with modern film. I think with the 80s, it actually fits pretty well. And obviously Power of Love, which is the song that plays when he's on the way to school because he's running late, which is Oscar nominated for Best Original Song, that was created for the film. That wasn't an existing pop song. So like there's a little bit of a difference when it's something that's made for the film as opposed to something that is like, pulled in from out of nowhere.
True. Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, but on my watching of this, the clocks actually tell you what's going to happen.
What do you mean by that?
Did you? So one of the clocks has a guy hanging by the minute hand, and that's how Doc Brown from 1955 has to connect the chords.
You know what? I've seen this movie
thing, but I saw it and I was like, wait, they just tell you what's gonna happen.
I've seen this movie so many times, and I did not know that was a thing. I'm literally gonna have to rewatch it again to just to catch those small details. It's one of those movies where details and little story beats will pop out to you every time you watch it. It's so brilliantly written. Obviously, Oscar nominated, Best Original Screenplay, but it is just that well written from its characters to its pacing. This movie is brilliantly paced. There never feels like there's a dragging moment in.
There's always something going on that has to be done with the story, and it flows so nice. How long is this movie? Like a 2-hour movie?
1 hour and 56 minutes, so 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours. Like watching this movie, it did not feel like 2 hours. It felt like an hour and a half, or maybe like an hour and 20, just because of how good the actors are and how good the writing is and the dialogue and what happens. So even in that first little sequence of all the clocks, I was looking for things that be not that would hint to something that happens, and that's how I found the guy on the hanging from the hand. I'm like, wait, that actually happens in the movie, but I've never seen this before.
Yeah, and I mean, you also think about like everything that is thrown into the DeLorean that's brought back in time, like the hazmat suit. Like, oh yeah, he just happened to be wearing it. No, then it ends up being how he convinces his dad to go along with things.
Every little item has a situation, and they use that situation to complete the story.
Yeah, and it's not plot convenience. It's everything is set up, and it's really close of an example to like modern day would probably be Edgar Wright films like the Cornetto trilogy, where everything that's shown is important. And when there may be some things that come up that aren't as important in this movie that are important in 2 and 3. So it just ends up being, more important down the road. And to be fair, we are not talking about Back to the Future Part 2 or Part 3 during this. This is only going to be talking about the first one. But both those movies are a lot of fun as well. They're pretty great movies as well. But I think the first one is still the strongest of the 3.
I like the futuristic one because it's futuristic. It's basically that was like 2 or 3 years ago that it was supposed to be now.
Supposed to be 2015. Yeah.
Yeah. So, 2015? Oh my gosh, that was almost 10 years ago.
Don't remind me.
But thinking about it, I'm like, okay, we have none of this stuff that they have now that they predicted to be in the future. But it's cool to look back at like how much like what people wanted to be invented back then, like the skateboard that hovers, stuff like that. But you still have your family diners that are there, the robots that serve you. So it's like, I know I'm going off on 2, but I just like the futuristic of 2. But number 1 is still probably the better movie.
Well, if you think about it too, there's a lot of things in the movie that they actually, in the second one, that they get right. There's the whole part where he's having the video calls. I mean, Zoom is a total thing.
Yeah.
We don't have fax machines all over our house, but like microwave meals are a lot more common than they were back in the 80s.
Mhm.
They're not probably as good as they should be, but they're popular and they're around.
They're common.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the style isn't the same. I'm not wearing my pockets on the outside, and I hope not, because I don't want private property stolen. But they don't get everything right, but it is quirky in its own way.
Okay, so I was thinking when I was watching this movie as well that they might time, crap. What is it called? Time
travel?
Time travel, yeah. Okay, so I was thinking when I was watching this movie that they made time traveling interesting, fun, and easy to explain. It wasn't like you had Doc that was like all into like the sciencey thing, but then you had Marty who was just like, oh, okay, I just have to press these two buttons and I'm back to the future or I'm back to the past. Like it's very simple and easy. So like if like a 13-year-old watched this, it's like, oh, they just went back to the future. I didn't have to know all this like mumbo jumbo physics or anything like that. Doc just did it and it's there. So that's what I liked about it too.
Yeah, and they explain time travel so easily, and how you shouldn't like obviously run into your parents. You can't do anything that'll affect the past. It goes over paradoxes in a way that's easy to understand. We get a little bit more of that explanation in the second movie, with a splinter timeline and things like that. But I feel like this movie does really well. Yeah, like you said, that explanation, right? You hit two buttons, you hit 88 miles an hour in your DeLorean, and you're where you want to be. Whereas, like,
which DeLoreans do not go 88 miles an hour either.
Right? When they're pumped through with plutonium, maybe, I don't know. Maybe that new DeLorean EV will. But I think that what's really interesting about this is that it was made in the 80s, obviously, and I would say that film analysis and kind of film discussion wasn't nearly as detailed or as intricate as it is now. And so I feel like if this movie came out today, people would pick this movie apart because of its time travel and how simple it is. I mean, think about how much they had to explain it in Avengers Endgame or other recent time travel movies, where they have to be like, yeah, basically everything in Back to the Future is a lie, and they have to establish a whole new science for how it works. Whereas Back to the Future is like, yeah, Doc's like, yeah, you got this, the flux capacitor or whatever it is. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, you had it right.
I think it's flux. Yeah, it's flux capacitor. And he's like, yeah, there it is. It's in the back. It's glowing. Right? It's radioactive, possibly. You might get cancer from driving the car, but who knows?
Yeah.
But then you hit those buttons, you hear that little like electronic wind up, whatever it is, and then you just hit that pedal and go. It's so easy, it's so simple, but it makes the movie work.
It does. And I don't think if it was released in the 80s and it was more complicated, it would be this successful. If they spent more time on them figuring out how to do time travel, I don't think it would have been this successful as a movie.
Yeah, 100%. I think because everything else is so tightly written, the dialogue is so well written, the pacing is near perfect. It's hard to, it's hard to nitpick too much into. I don't know if that works for time travel.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, though, for this is director Robert Zemeckis, who before this was really kind of an unknown. Really kind of directed just a couple of films that had some, they either were a flop or just, had a little bit of success. The only like truly successful film that he did before this was Romancing the Stone, which was at least not like a critical success, but it was popular enough box office wise. And that's what led into Back to the Future. And then Back to the Future is what established Zemeckis as a household name. So it's kind of cool how he got a couple of movies in his in his portfolio, and then he just comes out with a banger because he probably learned from those movies what to do, and then he's like, okay, let me just try to put that into this movie, Back to the Future, and then the rest is history. Yeah, I mean, he does this. He does some work on the show Amazing Stories with Steven Spielberg, And then, this was 85 when this film came out. And then in 88 does Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then in 1989 is Back to the Future Part 2. And then Back to the Future Part 3 in 1990. Like 3 movies back to back in 3 years. And this guy was worked to the bone. It's just unfortunate that not all of his recent movies have been successes. I mean, not a lot of us are very excited about some of his films with, the performance capture, like Beowulf and the Polar Express and things like that. Nothing quite hits the highs of Back to the Future or Forrest Gump with his career. But I mean, hey, he was the right person to put into Back to the Future because there's just that little something that he added to this movie, with whether it be, the decisions made behind the camera to increase tension or to push things along. It's brilliant, and really a good job here.
And the funny parts in this movie are truly like funny, because when at the beginning of the movie, when Marty's sister wants to go out with the guy, this is before he goes back to the future. The mom's like, "Oh, you're going out with a guy again? You can't be doing that, guy. I'm worried about you," and stuff like that. And then he goes, his mom's hitting on him the entire time. I'm like, okay, you were just like two different people. Like, what happened? So those are like the little funny parts, or like when he's the dad's being a pervert, and that's how they first met and stuff like that. And Marty gets to see that, but it's a different story when his dad tells it in the household. So it's just like those little things that are like, well, he wasn't really telling the whole story, and now Marty finds out. He's like, okay, he was just like a little perv.
It really plays into that fun idea that your parents were a little bit crazier when they were younger, right? They weren't the same. Maybe your parents are more prude, or they're more uptight or strict. They probably weren't like that back in the day. Outside the house, maybe they had strict parents, but they'll go outside and have some fun. So it's really funny, and it kind of plays into all of our. I mean, I'm sure we've all had this kind of, not fantasy, but like kind of daydream where we like, oh, well, if I went back in time and saw my parents, I wonder what would happen. Like, it's again, that's not the purpose of the movie, but it is just really funny that is an included part.
Yeah, it is. Well, and then it makes it funny too, because he doesn't tell. Does the mom tell Marty that the mom's dad hit Marty's dad, and then that's how they started dating? Or did she tell him that, or no?
Yeah, there's the part where they're sitting around the dinner table and they all kind of talk about how mom met dad, and then she says that my dad almost hit him with our car, and they brought him in, and that's how she got to know him. So yeah, it's the whole point is that Marty went back and immediately screwed it all up because he was the one that was hit by the car instead of his dad. And again, and then adds that tension where he has to fix it.
Well, and then freaking Calvin Klein is his name half the time in the past too. Just
because that's the name that was on his underwear. And back in the 50s, apparently, you had to write your name on your underwear.
Purple underwear. I've never seen that before. Did your mom wash them with clothes?
Dude,
so good.
If I ever go back in time, I'm making sure that I write the most badass possible name on my underwear just in case. Like, shout out to that Xbox player we were playing with last night, Max Darkhammer. Like, that would probably be what I write on my underwear. Just go back to the 50s and be like, yeah, I'm Max Darkhammer.
Yeah.
Sound like I'm a fantasy character. So the last thing I wanted to bring up with this movie is that it does set pieces really well. And if you think about it, they might not necessarily be an action set piece all the time. Well, it does have their action set pieces. It has the chase with the Bosnians, I believe is who they are in the beginning of the movie, where they end up shooting Doc Brown. And then you get, obviously, the last moment when they're trying to get the DeLorean to touch the cable at just the right moment when the lightning goes down. That set piece is more of a tension set piece. You have the set piece of the dance. I mean, that itself is a set piece where he's trying to make sure that everything happens because he's losing time. His hand is starting to disappear. All these set pieces are done so brilliantly, and they They just feel natural. None of the big moments, none of the epic moments, none of the tense moments, none of the emotional moments of this movie ever feel forced. It feels natural.
Well, even like when his arm is going away and it comes back because he saved time pretty much, and then the guys are like, "Oh, hey, you want to play another song?" And he's like, "Yeah," and then he starts playing. I forget what song it is, but I can hear it in my mind right now. Yeah, Johnny Be Good, and he goes, "Yeah, this is an old classic one." Oh, never mind. You guys, yeah, Oh, your kids will love this one soon or something like that. So,
that's at the end when he's doing like the major solo, and then he's just like, everyone's like, "What the heck are you doing?" And he's like, "I mean, you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it."
Yeah, but it's like tragedy struck, he got it back, and he's like, well, let's leave it with like a little bit of comedy here and stuff. So, and it didn't feel forced. It was just like, well, they're at a dance, why wouldn't he continue playing the guitar if the band asks him to? So
right, yeah, it just totally makes sense. And again, you gotta chalk it up to the performance. Michael J. Fox, and that is just what's killing it. He's selling it, and that's what's important.
And I like all the pieces too, the structures, like the clock tower and stuff. I mean, we have the benefit because we live in California that we can see that clock tower when we go to Universal and see all like the backlot and everything like that. So it's nice.
You literally visit Hill Valley as a part of that
exactly tour. You like to see, I like seeing stuff that have been in movies. You're like, yeah, that's the clock tower right there. It's like, it's nice to see that. And I wish more, I mean, it's going to be hard because no one's like Universal or Disney, but it's hard for them to be like, yeah, this is where this was filmed and this was filmed. It's nice to see that when we go to Universal and we get to actually like walk on the back lot and stuff like that, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think luckily you're starting to see that now with more studios opening their doors. I know Warner Brothers has a studio tour. I don't know if Disney does at their Burbank studios. I'd have to double check on that. And I think Paramount actually has a studio tour as well. Some of them can get kind of pricey, unfortunately, which I really want to go see Warner Brothers Studios, but it's expensive, but it's when you can preserve film history like that, it's wonderful. And the Hill Valley set was saved from the Universal backlot fire, which is awesome. And I'm glad that it was. Alrighty, and so those are our more detailed thoughts on Back to the Future. But Mr. Kevin, what did you give Back to the Future on Letterboxd?
I gave Back to the Future Part 1, was it a 4.5 stars out of 5. It's like in the 100 scale, it's a 95 on my scale. So it's a perfect movie to me, but I need to rewatch it to give it that 100.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I also gave it 4.5 stars. In fact, I have a 97 on my point scale. It is a near perfect movie, and there are very few stumbles throughout the way, and it is just so much fun to watch this movie. On next week's show, we got a little bit of a genre twist. We're going to be covering the Western revenge thriller Django Unchained, which is available to stream on various different services. If you want to check it out before the next show, that way they're much more knowledgeable and you haven't been spoiled on anything that's going to happen upcoming in that episode, because that would be bad. So now the question falls to you. What do you think of Back to the Future? Leave your comments down in the description below, and remember to be polite and respectful to one another. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on YouTube, as well as on our social media platforms all around the place with the name Real Watchers. Until the next time, keep your eyes on the screen.